Hey guys, this is the man in the flannel, back again here to bring you another exciting video here on YouTube. And today's video is going to be the inaugural episode of a series that I teased in the last episode, and that is going to be Flannel Countdown. Yes, I know, but that's extremely hokey, but come on, I am the man in the flannel, actually wearing a flannel today, inexplicably. But today is going to be about the top 5 controllers of all time. Now, the top 5 controllers of all time, that can be a very controversial subject. Many a folk have been murdered over the years over their thoughts on what the best controller of all time was. Well, maybe not murdered, but potentially punched is probably about as far as it would go. But before we get to today's countdown, let me go ahead and give my little plug, my shameless plug. I want you guys to all be sure that you are following me on Twitter at manintheflan, just like this, man_in_the_flan, not flannel. That's probably going to be my catchphrase. And yes, I know that my handwriting is absolutely terrible, but I'm a lefty, so. And many people are probably wondering if lefties have a hard time playing video games because the control stick will always be on the right side. And for me personally, I've never had a problem with this because in many walks of life, I am still ambidextrous. So I can use both of my hands for a lot of things, except writing, which is primarily left hand. Anyway, let's go ahead and get on to the countdown. Now, my countdowns are probably always going to be top 5s, but there occasionally could be top 10s. Illuminati sign, everybody. And for the pro wrestling fans out there, Diamond Cutter. But anyway, let's go on to the countdown now. And yes, I know that I've said about 500 times already. It's a habit that I'm going to try to get out of. So, let's go on to the countdown with our number 5 greatest controller of all time, the Wii U Pro Controller. Now, a lot of people are going to be saying, oh, it's far too new to make a countdown for something of all time. But, let me explain myself. The main reason that this is making the countdown is because it's extremely comfortable. It is extremely comfortable. It's a little bit big. It would be my only complaint. Well, actually, no, I do have a few more complaints. But the best thing that I can say for this is that it's extremely, extremely comfortable, which is what you need from a controller primarily. So let's just give a quick overview of the controller. Here we have our Wii U logo, power button, start, home, and select. Down here we have our D-pad, which is probably the best D-pad of the last decade. Rivaled only probably by the D-pad on the 3DS. Oh, I was still playing Mario 3D Land, apparently. Rivaled only by the D-pad on the 3DS XL. And I've also heard that the 2DS has a pretty good D-pad. Or no, excuse me, not the 2DS, the original 3DS. The 2DS apparently has a terrible D-pad, but I wouldn't know. Back to this, A, B, X, and Y, which started on this whole controller scheme started on another console in our countdown, so you can figure that out. Up here, ZL, ZR, L, and R, and then, of course, our 2 analog sticks, which, I don't know if you can tell, but compared to the rest of the white on the controller, that is extremely yellowed. I don't know why that is. I've seen other Pro controllers where the same thing has happened. Also, it picks up a lot. Well, focus then. I think that's about as good as we're going to get. Yeah? No. Okay, that's about as good as we're going to get. Yeah, it just picks up a lot of scuff marks, and the circles around it, which are for grip, also wear out pretty quickly, which is kind of unfortunate. And the other downside up here, which is not really a controller flaw, but more of a programming flaw, is that the trigger buttons up here are digital. They are not analog. Which means that if you're going to be playing a driving game, you're either going to be completely off the gas or completely on the gas. Which in today's modern gaming is kind of a downfall with this controller. But I still do like it. It's extremely comfortable, and it's been getting a lot of use from me lately because I've been on a bit of a Wii U kick. which is good. That's a good sign for the Wii U. So, number 5, the Pro Controller. Next is one of the classics, and is the oldest controller in our countdown, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, which, going from holding that to this is much smaller. You know, you can say what you want about the Atari joystick being revolutionary because of its, you know, the joystick and the one button, or the NES being revolutionary with its introduction of a D-pad, but to me, this is probably the most revolutionary controller of all time, because it completely upped the ante of what a controller should be. It added 4 buttons all at once, which, compared to its competitor at the time, the Sega Genesis, was a large step up, because the Genesis only had 3 buttons, so this had 6 buttons, which was a big deal. And it made fighting games, such as Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, which were huge at the time, much easier to play. I just bumped into the camera, sorry about that. Yeah, it made them much easier to play because you could do several combinations and things of that nature. To be honest, with my young age and also my lack of love for retro games, to be honest, yes, go ahead and send your hate mail here. I really haven't spent that much time with the Super NES controller, but I have spent enough time to know that it is the most comfortable controller made before the year 2000, in my opinion. And it is also the best, clearly. It's good for any genre. Good for RPG, good for platformer, good for fighters, good for anything really. So, except maybe shooters, but this was made before shooters really became a big deal. So, I'll let it pass on that. So yes, number 4, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System controller, mainly because of its introduction of the L and R buttons, which mine still work. A lot of people have theirs kicked in from Street Fighter 2, actually. So yes, that's number 4. Now, moving on to number 3, we have one of only 2 non-Nintendo controllers in this countdown. So, we have 2 non-Nintendo and 3 from Nintendo. So, again, not completely a Nintendo fanboy. Number 3 on the countdown is the Xbox 360 controller. Now, again, I'll be honest, I have not spent that much time with this one because the Xbox 360 is not really my thing, but I have spent enough time with it, again, to know that it is the best controller of the last console generation. And I say that because it's the best controller of the last console generation because it was the original controller of the last console generation. And you'll see what I mean by that in a minute. But yeah, this guy just completely fits in your hands nice and snug. And it's really comfortable, and I wish that there were better games to play on this system, at least better for me personally. Some people may be into the Xbox 360 library games more than I am, and to them I say more power to them. So just quick overview, the button that turns on the console, start and not select but back, A, B, X, and Y, which are all nicely colored different, something that started on the Sega Dreamcast. 2 analog sticks, really good analog sticks, probably the best of all time. And an absolutely terrible D-pad, probably the worst of all time. Up here, battery pack, which is something new in this countdown. That uses rechargeable, and that's a cord. That's actually the only one on our list with a cord, believe it or not. And up here, L and R, and then our LT and RT buttons, which are analog. And that's what I mean when I say analog. Because you can go kind of fast or really fast. And that's why I say that this is slightly better than that. And also it's a bit more comfortable. So yeah. Number 3, the Xbox 360 controller. Now, swiftly moving on. Let's go to number 2 on the countdown. The PlayStation controller. Specifically the DualShock. Now, when I say the PlayStation controller, I mean the PlayStation controller, and not specifically the PlayStation 3 controller, which happens to be what I have. This goes for the original DualShock on the PlayStation 1 and the DualShock 2 on the PlayStation 2. In fact, those might have an advantage over this one because of these are absolutely terrible. They're analog, yeah, but they're just terrible because your fingers slide off of them. Anyway, this is probably what most people think of when they hear the word controller now. And it's definitely what you think of when you hear the word PlayStation. Because it is just absolutely the classic PlayStation design with your XO, square, and triangle, which were something completely new at the time but nobody had seen. The broken up D-pad, which over the years I've grown fond of. Our two creamy joysticks down here. They always have been creamy. They've never been horrible little joysticks. And now on the PlayStation 4, there's a slight change with this. And that's just what I want to say, and that's the reason that this is number 2, is because this is such a classic design, and it's so perfect that there was really no need for change. There was virtually no change between the DualShock 1 and the DualShock 2. The only change on the DualShock 3 was the analog buttons, and now the DualShock 4 has the touchpad, and the analog sticks are a bit different. But other than that, it's just such a classic design. And to me, it is the second best controller of all time. So yeah, the PlayStation 1, 2, and 3 controller. Now before we get to number 1, I want to go through a few honorable mentions. First of all, the Sega Genesis controller, which I mentioned when talking about the Super Nintendo controller, because it was so huge that somebody over the age of 8 could play it comfortably for more than half an hour. The PlayStation 4 controller, which I have not spent that much time with. I don't have a PlayStation 4, but I have played a PlayStation 4, and the DualShock 4 is absolutely wonderfully comfortable. It's one. If I had a PlayStation 4, that it probably would have made the countdown. I'd also like to give a mention to the N64 controller because of how revolutionary it was and how much risks it took. But now let's go on to number 1, and I think that a lot of you are probably going to figure out what it is. It is undeniably the Wavebird. Not just the GameCube controller, the Wavebird. Probably my first wireless controller that really was ever worth, you know, the price that you paid for it. Wireless controllers before this were normally off-brand and horrible, but, you know, the GameCube controller was already really comfortable on its own, and then they just added the wireless ability and also the larger size, and it just gave the Wavebird so much to talk about. And it was the best controller of the 6th generation, which had 3 really good controllers, and then the Sega Dreamcast controller, which was kind of weird, but it got the job done. Anyway, let's just take a quick overview of the Wavebird. Analog stick, which I love the GameCube analog stick because it has notches in it. I like it when they're circular, but notches are better because if you're playing a shooter, it's easier for aiming, in my opinion. A horrible little D-pad, but that's okay. Camera stick, it does its job. It's not as big as the analog stick, as you can see up there, but that's okay. A, B, X, and Y, which are, some people would say, oddly placed. I say that this is good because you can distinguish between the A button and the B button more so than you could on any controller before. The X and Y button, you can also remember X is on this side, Y is on this side. And then up here we have our L and our R button, and then a new introduction, or not a new introduction, but an interesting introduction was the Z button being mounted on top of the controller. And it's also purple, which matched the color scheme of the original GameCube. Also, we have our start and pause button, no select button, which is interesting. There was also no select button on the N64 controller. And then down here, our on and off switch. In real life, that light looks a lot more orange, just for the record. And then, of course, in the back, we have our 2 AA batteries. So yeah, many of hours spent playing Luigi's Mansion, Super Smash Bros. Melee, and Brawl, because you can use this on the Wii, the original Wii. There's just so many great games on the GameCube. Eternal Darkness, Resident Evil 4. Just, the GameCube is a really underrated system in my opinion, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about controllers. And as far as controllers go, this is my favorite, and in my opinion, this is the best. This is as good as it gets, folks. So just keep that in mind. Anyway, guys, I have rambled for about 15 minutes, which means that this video is going to take about 30 hours to upload to YouTube. So anyway, guys, that was just my quick overview of the top 5 greatest controllers of all time. I'll be back again soon with another exciting video, more Nintendo related than this one, I would imagine. if that's what you primarily subscribe to me for. Anyway, guys, remember, follow me on Twitter, Man in the Flan. Subscribe to me, fill up that like bucket, and have a good day, guys. See you later.